Whether you're preparing course materials, publishing research, or working with digital resources, Impumi should be one of our key resources for ensuring that we stay compliant and informed. We're fortunate to have her guidance today in this talk organized by the CHSE. So, Mpumi, I hand over the virtual stage to you, and you can go ahead with your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, David, and everybody online. I just wanted to check if I am audible before I can proceed. If I can just get a thumbs up from those who can hear me. We
Yes, you
can.
are.
Oh, okay, thank you. As David introduced me, my name is Nompumelelo. In short, everybody calls me Mpumi. So yes, I do work with copyright, but for today's context, I'll be sticking to copyright for teaching purposes so that you can know how to apply the recommendations of remaining compliant in your teaching endeavors. If you do maybe want to schedule something for your for research purposes, then we can have another session. It's just that I understand that you are very busy, and I was trying to just keep the session within reasonable time so that yeah, I don't keep you for long. So I'm gonna switch off my camera now and just get into today's talk. All right, so as introduced, the copyright and fair use librarian. Today's topic is on copyright guidance for lecturers. So, just to introduce the topic of the day, I think everybody knows that copyright is a law, not just in South Africa, but everywhere else in the world. This means that the university has an obligation to follow the law, any law really. So we have a duty and a responsibility to abide by the law, even though we are an educational institution that mainly uses copyright content for educational purposes. It does not change the law, and it still does not evade the responsibility of using copyright content within a way that is legal. Second to that, as a university, we are copyright content producer through our research outputs and all our other publications that we produce. Therefore, it's also a way that the university gets its name out there to be the vets that it's known to be. And also it also helps us maybe retain our economic right in terms of making money from our copyright. So therefore, this makes it important for us to respect other people's copyright content, because we expect the general public to respect the content that belongs to us. Yes, this includes course packs as well, because that work belongs to the university. So on the third point, I highlight that works made in the course of employment, these are works that are part of your employment duties. That includes the course packs and the lecture slides or anything that is produced by you according to section 2 of the university's IP policy. It specifies that such works do belong to the university. So it matters what that a course pack or anything that is course content related is copyright compliant, because should it by any chance reach out externally, we still need to maintain integrity in and outside of the university. And then I want to touch on library database subscriptions. So the university has a very rich collection and subscribes to a lot of databases. So these are the databases that you've heard from your research and your information librarians. However, just because we pay for subscriptions, it does not mean we can use as we wish. There are terms of use that are stipulated in every subscription, and therefore this means the university is contractually obligated to adhere to whatever the vendor sets as rules about what we can and cannot do with the works on the databases. And then the fifth thing is that all lecturers are expected to report their copyright usage to Dauru through the library, which is me, which means that with every time that you want to use copyright protected works, you should report to the library so that we can see that you are using the recommended amount of content according to DALRO. So, just on that topic of DALRO, the university has a blanket license with them, but might change to a transactional license should our management decide to do so. So the difference between the two licenses is that a blanket license, it allows for copying copyright protected works and using them before we can report to DALRO or whilst we report to DALRO. Whereas the transactional license requires that we make payment first before we can make use of the work. So currently, the blanket license we pay the fee in advance, assuming that the whole university will use copyright protected works. So the amount is charged per student with the assumption that everyone will use copyright protected works. But that is not always true. Sometimes it's a very small portion of our academics that actually make use of copyright protected works. Therefore, the transactional license, which is the pay per use type of license, it does require a bit more admin. However, we pay for content of the lecturers that actually use copyright protected works, which means we spend much less funds or license fees in comparison to the blanket license. So this is where the duty to report to DALRU comes in. If we have used, sometimes if the assumption is correct and all lecturers do use copyright protected works, then DALRU is able to calculate if the university needs to top up on that blanket license fee. Because if you don't do so, then we automatically fall into the risk of being accused of copyright infringement. So, yeah. So, your role as a lecturer is to understand the following when compiling your course guides. First of all, copyright is the law. So, copyright grants any creator, author, exclusive rights, which to reproduce, distribute, and publicly display their works. So again, if you do any of these, if you act if you do any of these actions, which is to reproduce, distribute, or publicly display the work without the right permission, it could go against you and therefore the university as a whole, as you may be accused of copyright infringement. Secondly, the risk you need to understand the risks that are associated with using to use copyright protected work without the appropriate authorization. So we do find situations where we have our academics go to the printing room and request that a whole book or half of a book be copied for their study guides. Also, this can get us into serious problems, and I say us because I refer to it's an action by one person that might affect the whole university. So it might result in legal penalties and also a whole lot of things such as reputational damage. And then the goal that we want, we know that sometimes, like I said, lecturers are so busy. We don't want to frustrate you with admin, and we don't want to implement processes and things that might take away your time, but we do want to make sure that you don't fear the ability to use copyright protected works. We just want to make you understand and give you guidance on the right steps of what to do legally so that we avoid any of the above two problems, such as copyright infringement and any consequence that might arise from it. So we have developed this workflow. It will be published on Ulwazi and it will also be found on the library's LibGuides, but it's just a guideline on the steps to follow. It's a step-by-step process beginning from what you do on the clearance system that we have currently, for when you want to request permission or report your usage. So it's 8 steps, but it's a really quick process because you have the information of what you intend to use and how much of it you intend to use. So it looks something like that. If you see this wheel anywhere when you are on our LMS or our lib guides, then it will, anything that you forget, you can just refer to this wheel and it can guide you further. And then how do lecturers remain compliant? So the things that we are going to discuss apply to both soft copy and hard copy works, because I know some lecturers prefer to print their works, whilst some just prefer to have their works uploaded on an LMS. So all these next things that we're going to discuss are applicable to both. So the first thing is to aim to use public domain materials. These works that are readily available to the public without permission. So for something to reach the public domain, it has to be something that has expired, meaning it has reached the copyright protection validity period. So in South Africa, copyright protection is valid for a period of 50 years. And how you calculate that is that you will, based on when you look at the publication, it will give you the time of the date of publication, and you can calculate based on that. And if it is 50 years and above, then you know that it automatically fell into the public domain. And therefore, there is no obligation or requirement for you as a copyright user to request permission from the author or owner. But this does not take away the responsibility to cite accordingly, because if you don't do so, then you create other problems such as plagiarism. It's no longer a copyright issue, but now a plagiarism issue. And my assumption is maybe since you are under health, you use a lot of Department of Health content. So that is work that belongs to the public. This one does not need any permission from any government department. So you can go ahead and use it, but also cite accordingly, according to the citation standards of your faculty. And then secondly, we encourage that you, as lecturers, you leverage open access content and works that are licensed under a Creative Commons license. So with open access content, I think we talk a lot about open access, which is the promotion of research to be available to to the general public. Of course, most researchers who publish open access, it does not mean it's not quality work. It's just there to be accessible without the having to hassle the user with permission requesting. Similarly to Creative Commons license, it's not a different license. It's actually in support of copyright. It's just that once you see a work that is published under Creative Commons, it means that the author has granted permission in advance and has set out the expectations of how they want their works used. So wherever you see a CC BY, most open access content will be most likely be published under a Creative Commons license. One just needs to be sure to follow the terms of use according to the CC license. But it is generally safe to use any works that are openly accessible and are licensed under Creative Commons. And then library licenses. This is also something that we encourage, that before you look for an article, you try and see if the library does not already subscribe to it, because the library has paid for for a subscription fee, and therefore it should be accessible to lecturers and our students. However, we encourage that lecturers rather attach a link to the said article instead of placing the PDF version of the article on, because this placing a PDF will then take away the usage statistics from the database itself, and therefore it will look like the database itself is underutilized, and then it would cause the statistics will force the library to reconsider continuing with the subscription or not. Also, it's copyright compliant when students go to the articles and access the articles themselves. If the article allows for a download, they may do so. And then applying fair use and fair dealing principles. So fair use or fair dealing, depending on which country you are in, is essentially the same thing. It means you use a certain amount of work based on certain factors that deem the use of the copyright content to be fair or not. So these four factors: the purpose of your use, the nature of work that is being used, the portion you intend to take, and the effect that it might have on the potential market. So for a use to be fair, all these things need to be present in the decision. By saying that, I mean the decision of whether something a use is fair or not lies with the content user, which is you in this scenario. So if maybe you want to use, let's say, a chapter in a book, you need to consider the purpose. Are you using it for educational purposes? Naturally, it would be a yes. So therefore, the purpose would be fair. The nature of the work, is it in any artistic format? Because usually with artistic works, they can be of high value, and if they are of high value, then resharing them alters the author or creator's ability to make money. So therefore, it would be unfair if that's the type of work you are dealing with. However, if it's scholarly works, then or nothing of artistic nature, then that's point number two. That would make the use fair. And then thirdly, how much do you intend to take? So out of, let's say, 100-page book, you only want to use 10 pages, which is usually what is the recommended amount of usage according to Dauro, because there's no amount or usage that is stated in the Copyright Act. Therefore, collection agencies such as Dauro have recommended that 10% is fair. However, if you need to use more than that, that's when the permission asking comes into place, or maybe consider using something else. Or I don't know what other, but permission is usually the best way to go about it if you need to use a larger amount of content. Sometimes if I cannot request or obtain the permission by myself, I work with people from Dauro. So always ask for assistance in that, rather than taking the chance of reproducing and distributing without the appropriate permission. And then fourth, the potential market, the potential effect on the owner's ability to make money from their works. So if you see that, if I'm using a scholarly publication for educational purposes and I'm only using under 10%, it cannot harm the author's ability to make money. Then your use is fair and you may proceed, sometimes without even asking permission. But we always prefer that we report even if it's under 10%. And then the agency will see if they can deduct from our license fee or not, or even charge us should we go under a transactional license. And then lastly, request for permission. It is important when you are unsure of the work you are dealing with. Sometimes you'll find that it's a framework that was developed by somebody, or something that you feel like the university does not subscribe to, or something that you know you need a substantial amount of access to. It's better to try and request for permission. You can try and request your permission for yourself, and you can ask me to assist you. I am always happy to do so, but it's rather safer to assume, if you are unsure if something is copyright protected or not, assume it's protected and seek the right permissions before you can use. I know it's the videos, maybe things that are available on Google with online works. there is a myth that works that are online are freely available to the public, and that is not always the case because anybody can take something that is copyright protected and make it available online. And therefore, when you come as a user, Google, and it pops up and you use it, you are still using a copyright protected work and you are infringing on copyright. So it's important to always make sure that you understand the terms of use, especially with images and videos. Even YouTube videos may require permission before you can use them in your lesson or anything of a similar nature. Yeah, permission is the best way to stay compliant. And then what are the consequences of copyright infringement? So the first consequence is that it can lead to an interdict, meaning a copyright owner can apply for an interdict to prevent potential infringement from the user. But this is only applicable in a case where maybe you've requested permission and the said author knows that you intend on using their works and they want to stop you from proceeding to use their works. They can apply for an interdict to stop you from using their works. A second consequence is to issue a fine. So, should you be found guilty by the court of law, you should be found guilty of infringement, the law can apply a fine, which is a minimum of 3,000 rands or 3 years imprisonment. So because the accountability is institutional, I don't think it's possible to send us to prison. So the most appropriate sanction would be the fines. So it's a minimum of 3,000 and a maximum of 10,000. So this is per infringement. It's not just per in incident. So if you have shared, let's say, a copy of a book with 50 students, then it will be any amount between 3,000 to 10,000 multiplied by the number of students. That's where the fine can be inflated and it can result in the university paying copious amounts in fines. And then legal action. The third consequence is the copyright owner can also sue for damages. It's also a it it's just as it's similar to the issuance of fines. It's also the person can go to a lawyer and sue the university and sue for whatever, not just based on the calculation of infringement. They can add other things, and and if they win, the university can be in even bigger trouble if should the author claim stress, and we can even have to pay legal costs. And then it's not just about the fine, it can be inflated by those other things should an owner decide to sue. And then lastly, we could suffer reputational damage as a university. So your academic and professional reputation can be affected severely because I'm sure once an issue reaches the library, the relevant department gets contacted, and the department has to handle it going with the lecturer in the way they see appropriate. But this is something that will not go unnoticed, especially at by university management. So once it gets out there, it could cause problems for us as copyright infringers. And then I'm not sure if you are familiar with this form. I can do a demo for you if you are available, if you do not know this form, but it's basically the form that is used to report copyright usage. So once you get onto the library website, you scroll down and click on request copyright. It will you will land on a page like this, and then you will click on the online form option there, and then it will pull up an electronic form. Basically, what it's requesting is the bibliographic information of the content that you are using and how much of it you have used. as to calculate everything that I said that Dauro will need to know for license purposes. Yeah. If you need me to do a demo, you would like to know anything, I'm happy to do so. Otherwise, then this is the end of my story. I am happy to take any questions, or Devin, you can indicate if I should do a demo or not.
I think we are within the time frame of the session, so maybe you should actually just do a quick demo so those in attendance are aware of how to actually get to the form, and then we can take questions. Thanks.
Okay. Okay. So once you're on the VITS website, you naturally you're gonna go to the library website, and then you just scroll down where you're gonna see all the options of our services. And then one of them right there is request copyright clearance. You click on it, and then you'll see the online form that I was the screenshot, and then this is what will pop up. You'll just fill in your details of the as the lecturer, the title of the it will request you for the title, your department, and then it gets into the bibliographic information, like, and how much of it you used. So it's gonna ask, is it a cost pack? Then you click on the yes. How many cost packs did you make? And then you'll say how many students you printed for, and then you'll proceed to fill in the bibliographic details. It's very important that you fill in these details accurately, because then it avoids any sort of issue. If Dauro comes back to us, because I do forward these forms to Dauro, if they come back and they say that you are not reporting accurately, I would then have to go back to the lecturer and say, hi, please, this application was not filled in accurately. Dauro is requesting that you do so. So it's easier if you just fill it in correctly from the get-go, then you know it's done. So the system might change as time goes on, but for now, this is the one that we use, and for the remainder of the year, this is the one we use. If you need any assistance or it gives you any trouble, you can contact me. We also have an Excel spreadsheet where you can just fill in all these details. In addition to that, I do have some other lecturers who find this form tedious and don't have the patience to fill in per publication. So they rather request that I send them the Excel spreadsheet where they put everything into one spreadsheet. That can also be, or anything that you think will work best for you. You are welcome to contact me and I can help, just as long as we make sure that our lecturers remain compliant. Yeah. I'm happy to take any questions now.
Are there any questions? I think just to find out from you, Mpumi, with regard to the copyright clearance for the next academic year, is there a time frame by the end of this year that they need to actually apply, or can it be done ad hoc?
Before the end of November would be best. There is no due date, but it's throughout the year. Throughout the year, the minute you know you are compiling your course pack, it's best to get rid of this and get it out of the way. Or anytime that you maybe find an article that is useful for your students and you want to use it, start with this process. It's open throughout the year. You can submit at any time during the year. But in December, we must have collated all our usage to send to Dauro. So I prefer that we do that on the 1st of December before closure and everyone goes on their vacation.
Okay, thanks. Chloe, I think Chloe's hand's up. We can go ahead.
Thanks. I just have a few questions, I think.
Okay, no
So,
problem.
with regards to
Bumi.
this form, yes, thanks,
Mhm.
So, with regards to the form, often as an academic, we'll be putting together our course packs maybe like a month before our teaching, if we're lucky. What is the turnaround time on this form?
There is no turnaround time under the blanket license.
Just as long
So
as
what what you do currently for now, what we do is you report to me, and if everything is fine, you won't hear from me. However, if a form reaches my desk and I see that, okay, the total number of pages of the book versus what you have requested to use is above the 10% threshold, I'll then contact you and say, Dear Chloe, the Dauro is not, because Dauro will not clear. They
Okay.
will get back to us and say, Hi, sorry, please request the lecturer to reduce their usage. So there is no turnaround time currently on under the blanket license. But once the transactional license applies, then there will be a turnaround time. So I don't know what that looks like yet. But yeah, I think I will let you know once those changes start taking effect. We can possibly go into another year with a blanket license, but management is strongly trying to transition licenses. So for now, you don't need to worry about things such as turnaround time.
Thanks. And then for this form, does it also apply for pictures? So, if you're using a picture from a journal article or from a book, would you fill in the form the same way?
No, under the, especially if you're gonna share it on Ulwazi,
Yeah.
it's generally fair. Should there be any problem, I think the most that the copyright owner can do is to apply for us to take it down.
Okay.
So if you are unsure, especially if it's something that you think is generating income for the author, then you contact me and we talk about it and we see what the subscription terms look like, because I won't know
Okay.
what the terms of use look like for each and every journal. So then we go to that specific journal and we look at what the terms say. And if we need to seek permission, then it's easy for us to discuss with the vendor.
Okay. And then I suppose the last question was, I know you mentioned online content is
Mhm.
generally, it could be free to
Mhm.
use, but it could also not be.
Yes.
So if we like give them a link, so we don't actually post the video, but we say, oh, you should go look at this video. Is that okay?
Yes, that is 100% okay.
Okay, perfect.
That okay, yeah. I think the short answer is yes.
Okay, great. That was all my questions. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Chloe.
Are there any other questions from anyone else? I don't see any further hands. If there's no other questions, just remember in the presentation, Nompumelelo basically put her details, so you could actually contact her, and maybe we should actually just put it in the chat as well, so that people can actually contact her directly. So if there's no further questions, thank you, Mpumi, and thank you everyone for attending today's session. Have a good day further. Thank you and bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.